Hey Kathy, is one of these, see it, but I'm just, good evening. For those of you in the audience who have not attended one of these hearings recently, let me review our normal procedure. Staff will introduce each item for consideration. If you'd like to speak, please fill out the speaker form located on the table in the lobby and indicate the item number and whether you are for or against the item. Please give the form to the clerk seated on my left. The applicant and supporters will be heard first. Those in opposition to the request will be heard next. Then the applicant will be given a chance for rebuttal if necessary. Comments should be restricted to pertinent information regarding the agenda item under discussion. If you're an individual, you will have 3 minutes for comments. If you're speaking on behalf of a group, you will have 6 minutes for comments. Speakers should move closer to the podium when their item is being presented by staff. Speakers should identify themselves clearly for the record by stating their name and address. Each speaker should be given respectful and courteous attention. The board may ask questions of speakers or staff members. Information such as pictures, site plans, letters, etc., presented at a public hearing will be kept as part of the public record. If you have some information on your cell phone you would like to show us, staff can get it up on the screen, but you probably don't want to give us your cell phone for the record, so you're going to have to promise to send it to staff after the hearing. I will then ask for a motion from the board. Once the motion has been made and seconded, discussion will be closed to the floor. Following board discussion, a vote will be taken. During voting, board members who do not cast objecting votes are considered to have voted in support of the motion. Any person aggrieved by any decision of the Board of Adjustment may, within 15 days, file an appeal to the Board of County Commissioners through the Planning and Development Division of the Development Services Department. Okay, we're ready for our first item.
Good evening, Hillary Payton, Planning and Development. Item number 1 is a continued variance request for 394 West Wind Court located in the Lakewood at the Crossing subdivision. It was continued from last month's meeting as the placard was not able to be posted to the property. The variance request is for a south side street setback reduction from 20 feet to 4 feet for a privacy fence in the Greenwood Lakes Plan Development. Subject property is a corner lot and has 2 front yards for setback purposes. The front of the house faces West Wind Court. The Spring Tree Way side is where the variance is being sought. The request is to construct a 6-foot wooden privacy fence 16 feet into the 20-foot side street setback. The proposed privacy fence is 4 feet from the sidewalk and 16 feet from the edge of pavement. The proposed privacy fence encroaches into a utility easement, and a building permitting will be required to meet the criteria for placement with an estoppel letter. Traffic engineering has no objection to the placement of the fence as it relates to site visibility. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, we have any questions for staff?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Just a real quick question. In the explanation for the variance criteria that the applicant provided, one of the comments said that the variance will allow for the placement of a storage shed. I know that's not on the site, but
It would require a variance as well.
right,
If they're trying to place
yeah.
it within that area.
Okay, I mean, I'll obviously ask the applicant the same thing, but we're not approving any variance for any structure at this point. It was just for the fence.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant present? Sir, is there anything you would like to add? Hold on, I need you to come up to the front. It's recorded, they can't hear you from back there. Please give your name and address for the record.
Oh, gotcha. My name is Tyler Hoover, and I live at 394 West Wind Court.
Okay, what would you like to tell us?
I have just a couple letters from the neighbor that my property butts up against in the back, and then I have one from the neighbor that essentially across the street that would be looking at the fence. I don't know if I could give them to anybody to be considered.
Sure. Yep.
And do they get read as part of my 3 minutes, or?
Oh, we'll look at them.
Oh, you look at them.
You're not timed. The applicants, the applicants have no time limit.
Okay.
Everybody else that speaks for or against has a time limit.
Okay.
Okay? Anything else?
We just currently have 175 square feet of usable yard inside our fence. This is an incredibly small area for us, our 10-year-old, and our dog to use. The yard outside the fence is essentially unusable to us due to the safety and privacy concerns. There's a lot of vehicle and foot traffic that passes by our home on Spring Tree Way, as it is a main thoroughfare for our neighborhood. Extending the fence would allow us to access our yard with peace of mind and would greatly add to our quality of life in the home. The fence would pose no threat to public safety, such as blocking the view of traffic, nor would it create any negative impact on anybody else's quality of life. And we have one neighbor that shares property line with us and a neighbor whose home faces our fence. We have good relations with these neighbors and have both written letters in support of the board's consideration. Several other corner lots in the neighborhood have extended their fences past 21 feet as required by county ordinance with seemingly no negative impact or damage to the structural integrity of the property or surrounding properties. The utility easement would also be left clear to access by utility workers. In the event they need to enter the fence portion of the emergency, they would grant easy access to a gate that we were planning to install. In addition to this variance if this variance would be granted, we would remain in compliance with HOA standard. We thank the board for their time and consideration.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Just a couple questions. There was two things that, in your variance criteria that you provided to ask why, one of the things you had it said was that, there's similar lots with fences within 5 feet of the sidewalk. Just trying to figure out why you chose 4.
So this is our first time doing this. This is actually our first home. We waited about a year to figure out if we wanted to go through this process, so we decided upstairs. Again, I know how hearsay is, but upstairs we were told by somebody that knows what they're doing to ask for 4 feet. My wife, who's not on the deed or anything like that, is in here. She explained it the best that she could to me that it was suggested that 4 feet.
Okay, I was just wondering if there was a magic number there.
No, there's no significance.
And the other question that I follow up with that I asked staff is obviously, one of the things you said you want to put a storage shed in there. Obviously, that has nothing to do with anything, the decision we make tonight.
If we do, that'll be way in the future.
Okay, and it would require another variance, just like this question. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
I have a question for the chair.
Yes.
Just thinking about the future, I know that the storage shed is not a part of this application, but in future, would that shed be allowed to be placed within the utility easement that's enclosed inside the fence? Or would it
Well, they would
be-
have to apply for a separate variance request, and if it's in utility easement, they would have to get a estoppel letter for the shed too, I believe. So it'd be the same requirements because it's in the easement.
Unless the shed would be able to be on skids and be movable, it wouldn't be allowed in the utility easement.
Right, yeah. I actually have seen that, where they have people build their sheds on skids and they can drag it out away with their truck and then the power company won't object. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone to speak in support of the request? Is there anyone to speak in opposition to the request? Okay, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Motion carries, it's approved. Good luck to you. On a separate note, totally unrelated, what regiment were you in the 82nd?
255.
Okay, I was in the 325.
Oh, really?
Who, airborne.
Yeah, all right, sir.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you, guys. You too.
Okay, next item.
Good evening, Angie Califer with Planning and Development. Item number 2 is a request for a side street south setback variance from 20 feet to 5 feet for a fence in the R1BB Single Family Dwelling District in the Chapman Pines subdivision located at 2356 Green Symphony Place. The subject property is a corner lot and considered to have 2 front yards for setback purposes. The front of the house faces Green Symphony Place. The Blossom Sound court side is where the variance is being sought. Traffic engineering has no objection to the placement of the fence as it relates to site visibility, and the Chapman Pines Homeowners Association approved the proposed fence and location subject to county approval. The proposed privacy fence will be 5 feet from the sidewalk and 17 feet from the edge of pavement. There have not been any prior variances for the subject property, and this concludes my presentation.
Okay, any questions for staff?
Chair?
Yes.
I go back to the variance criteria the applicant provided, number 4. They said that there's other, in the neighborhood says they have been permitted with the same, similar variance. Do we have any record of that?
We do not.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Yes, question. Like you said, item number 4 on the variance criteria sheet, a specific address was given, 2314 Ivy Harvest Place. Is there no variance on record for that specific address?
Go ahead.
No, there's not.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's okay.
Any other questions?
I guess for discussion amongst us, though, also is, even if it had been granted, there's no such thing as a precedence for our board, correct?
That's correct. We're supposed to weigh each one individually based on the merits. Somebody might have extenuating circumstances and one that doesn't apply to another. All right, is the applicant present? Hi, is there anything you would like to add? If so, I need you to come on down. It's like being a contestant on The Price is Right.
You don't win anything.
Let's make it one costume.
Yes, please state your name and address for the record.
Jonathan Duryea, 2356 Green Symphony Place. My wife, Kaylee Duryea.
Okay, what would you like to tell us?
Just thank you for the opportunity. We do have a very strict HOA policy where the fence can only go up to 1/3 of the side of the house. So really the emphasis on the variance is just to try to maximize the play area. We have a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old.
Okay. So if I'm reading this correctly, the side of the house is the setback?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So you couldn't have a side yard fence at all without some type of...
Very minimal, yeah.
It's a very
Yeah.
small yard.
Okay, and why 15 feet? How'd you come up with that magic number?
5 feet?
Well, why it's leaving you 15 feet between the fence and the house. So what drives that decision? We're supposed to grant the minimum setback necessary
Yep.
within, so I'm just trying to understand how you came up with the location of the fence.
Our fence installer recommended 5 feet from the sidewalk. He said that that was typical for, to be that far from the sidewalk and the public property. So we kind of went with his guidance there to maximize our yard, but be far enough from the sidewalk.
Okay. And I'm not predicting the board's decision, but I'm just asking. If we arrived at a lesser number, say 10 feet, something, would that be okay with you?
Yeah, anything.
It's not the end of it's not the end of life or anything?
Correct.
It would, but it would make our side yard not as usable for our children.
I
and
understand.
safety. Yeah.
One of the challenges with corner lots is they're actually oversized a fair amount. I think it's something like 30%, because they understand you have 2 front yards for setback purposes. So they give you more space to accommodate the larger setback. And this is a common thing all the time. Folks want to use the whole yard within a fence, but the code really wasn't designed for that. They tried to give you more land to offset the fact that you can't fence it all. So you could have more inside the fence, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone to speak in support of the request? Is there anyone to speak in opposition to the request? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, motion to approve.
Motion to approve, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Yes, sir?
You guys know I don't like these kinds of fences. And to not be a broken record, to share some thoughts that I have. And I'm very concerned considering the things we've heard from our first two applicants tonight. My first main concern is that we have a land development code that says, based on a great deal of work by some very intelligent planners and engineers, this is how our county should be developed. And part of that rule is with these new neighborhoods, you know, it's always these new neighborhoods that come in. They can't have fences. But the developers and the realtors will say to the people who buy the houses, because you know we've heard them say it plenty of times, oh, just go ahead and apply for a variance, you'll get it. And what happens? We rubber stamp them. And we are consistently building walled-off communities. We're balkanizing neighborhoods inconsistent with the ideas of our land development code. What's the point of having it if we're just going to keep rubber stamping these things? Second, and this is something that's really concerning to me, I've been suspicious of this, call me paranoid if you want, but we're hearing it from applicants tonight. The fence contractors have our number. 2 people have come in tonight and said, we've been told ask for this. And we're just rubber stamp, whatever they want, take it. Nobody can explain why they need 15 feet. But fine, we want it. Motion to approve, second. And I think that we need to show greater respect for our land development code. And I'm sorry for ranting, but it's just, I don't think this is a good look for our county. And I think it will not serve us well in the future. And so, thank you for letting me rant, and those are my thoughts.
Okay. Let me ask you this, is there a number that you can live with?
No.
Okay. I'm just asking. Is 0.
Absent an applicant coming in and giving me a darn good, because the burden is always on the applicant to show reasonableness. That's why where our staff partners always go through those 6 steps. The burden is on the applicant. And the applicants never come in with a good reason. It's, I want as much as my yard fenced as I can get. You guys always give these things, so let me have what everybody else is getting. As you're seeing in these applications, my neighbor's got it, I want what my neighbor's got. We're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy that's going to keep spiraling, because the more, what was it last month? A guy came in with that long list, remember that long list he gave us? He had researched all the times we'd granted this stuff. Now, we know there's not precedence, but we're building out there in the community a sense of expectation of, you did it for these other people, why not me? And a mark starts making, when we start saying no, when we finally start following the rules, it will start making us sound arbitrary and capricious when we do so. And I think we're setting a bad trend for what this board does and what its job is supposed to do. We've got 6 criteria, and if an applicant, I mean, we've all been before plenty of, well, some of us have. You go before boards, say, for example, the planning and zoning boards, or you go before boards in other jurisdictions. You stand up before a board and you say, here's a 6-part test, and here's why I meet the 6-part test. Our applicants are coming in and saying, I want it, I feel like it. And we're saying, yeah, you seem like nice people, take it. That's not good planning. That's not good land use thinking. And I really want us to start paying better attention to the burdens, respectfully I ask, to pay better attention to applicants, their burdens, and make them meet it. Let's not be a rubber stamping board anymore. And I respect you guys, and I say that with no disrespect, because I know how intelligent all 3 of you are. So, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for letting me rant.
Okay.
I'll stop.
Can I reply?
Yes, sir.
I respect your opinion greatly, but on the same side of it, I think the question is not for us to decide, other than to, refer a question back to our staff or to the Board of County Commissioners that there's a flaw in the land development code when it comes to this. To require a applicant, a house somebody buys one on the corner lot, and they're paying taxes on that piece of property, they want to use it safely, privately, to ask them to use the same setback as the building setback line, I think is too stringent. So, and I will tell you, and I've told you in the past, that there are other municipalities that I've participated with that have solved this by coming up with a line, 50%. They can go 50%, which gives us a broader spectrum to say, you get 50%, okay, we don't have to ask that question anymore of what's an acceptable number to us, If they can go half the distance without going through a variance process or coming to us, okay, that would be a simpler solution for us and give us a better guideline, instead of saying you can't have any variance, or, you know, you have, as you said, what they want for their reasonable application. So, you know, so I think that question, you know, and you bring this up multiple times, as you said, the question is that as a board, maybe we need to decide then to go back to and, you know, ask staff or the county commission to reevaluate, you know, an option for it. Because in my opinion, I go back to, you know, what we have codified right now. The applicant and their people that were here first, or the current applicant, you know, they have a position, they have a process that they can go through coming to us. That's what our job is, to evaluate that. And again, it's not in my opinion, sitting on this board, I look at each one individually, but I'm not going to, I don't have a magic number in my head that I'm going to say, I don't believe in any of this, you know. I lived in Seminole County. I lived on a corner lot. I did the same thing personally. I took advantage of it in my municipality, not here, but so I have a different opinion that there is a process that allows them to do that. It's us, and that I do not believe by any means whatsoever that we're rubber stamping anything, you know. So regardless of what we've done in the past, there is no precedent. Whether we've approved one or denied one, doesn't matter. So I'm in opposition to what your opinion is at this point, respectfully.
No, and I take it as respectfully, but what are your thoughts on the 6-part test that's in the Land Development Code, and the law says applicants have to meet this test? And
So
should we perhaps use
the
that?
6-part test is this. When I will tell you how I look, when I look at this, if an applicant came before me, not this one in particular, but they came and they said, I want 100%, I want a zero, you know, go all the way to the max. That is not the minimum, you know. If the applicant is looking at it from a standpoint of, are other residences allowed the same freedoms, because their lot is significantly different. It's on a corner. They are governed by 2-side setbacks. That sets them apart from a majority of all the other lots, you know. So there is a distinction that their lot is different. So that's how I look at the 6-part. And again, I didn't answer 6 parts, but, you know, I look at the criteria to see how they evaluate it.
But we have to remember that corner lots by the Land Development Code are larger. They're always
But-
larger.
Understood, but they also pay more for it. And they also, when you buy something, you want to have the right to use the entirety of your property, regardless. I mean, it's, and as you know, I don't believe it's the fence companies that are doing this. I believe, you know, when people buy these new homes in a new subdivision, the salesperson is saying, yeah, want to put a fence? You can put a fence all the way wherever you want. It's your property. That's the sales pitch. I heard it 30 years ago when I bought mine. So it wasn't the fence company. It starts with the builder, you know, that they're not informing people when they buy these lots that you can only put a fence to the limit of your building without going through some variance process. You know. I don't know if I answered your question succinctly, but
You answered my question. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, no matter where the county draws the line, somebody's going to go past it. And so the counties, really, there is a line, it's the setback. Some municipalities have said we can reduce the number of variances by allowing 50%. But the line, no, but if they want to cross that line, it suddenly becomes a variance issue. So this county takes the position that the setback is the line. And you're supposed to justify anything that goes past that line. There should be a reason for it. There should be a need not created by the applicant. I try to be reasonable, and I understand all sides of it. Like, I'm no secret, I'm not real fond of fences close to a sidewalk, or real close to a roadway if there's no sidewalk, because I think there's a safety issue for people on it. And it just doesn't look good. If you go into some of these older subdivisions where they got walls 3 feet off the sidewalk, and you just see this long tunnel. Now, it's not the people. A lot of times, those walls are built by the builder. It's not even their fault, and the county maybe came in and put a sidewalk in later, and that was a county issue as to why they did it that way. But I think we do have a responsibility to maintain the appearance of the neighborhoods as much as we can within reason, too. I don't want to categorically deny every variance request just because, but I don't agree with approving every variance request. I've voted both ways on this issue over the years, frustrating people on both sides of whatever the motion was. I don't know what the happy medium is. I think everybody has to vote their conscience as a board. I do wish, and I will say, we would have more of our board members present because it makes it easier. Like right now, you may have a motion for. If I take his side of this and vote against, we have a split board, the motion can't proceed. It's not fair to have them continue it another month just so we can get more people on the board. And that's a separate issue, and I want to call some of the folks that are supposed to be here. I know there's one on the list right now. I was looking at the list today that I haven't seen in a year, I don't think. So that's a separate issue. Let me ask you a question. Well, I've asked him. Is there a motion? I fully knew your position before you spoke up, sir. We have spoken before. You sound a lot like somebody else I know whose last name was similar. I really don't like 5 feet off a sidewalk. That just kills me. I can't help it. I used to be more in favor of something closer to 15 feet. It hasn't been known. I've conceded that in many cases, 10 feet is going to be the number that we're going to agree on. Y'all have an issue with amending your motion to 10 feet off the sidewalk? They don't have any particular reason for the 15?
There is, again, my position is that I don't want to amend my motion.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with what the applicant has put forth. And for the purposes of, again, furthering this long-winded discussion, goes back to the criteria. And I said and again, I'm not quoting anybody, we found a solution to help with these kind of variances because this was the norm. This is what we were seeing all the time. By increasing it and giving the board a little more flexibility to say you already have enough, we don't need to give you any more, And two, the other thing that we did that I didn't mention is that we made them provide mitigative techniques. Either, you put the fence up, but you also have to put shrubbery up or landscaping up to hide, the aesthetics, the value of it and stuff like that. So there was other things that we applied in that 6 criteria. It's not in ours, but, what we had done before is we required mitigative techniques that were required to be on the onus of the homeowner or the
I
applicant.
understand. I've seen it where they put a line of hedges on the side.
Right.
And they don't need our permission for that. They just put the hedges.
Correct, but,
They can put them
it was
flush
a
against
requirement. It
the
was a
sidewalk if
requirement.
they want to. And then if they happen to stick a fence behind it, and I didn't have an issue with the variance in this case because you couldn't see the fence at all anyway because the hedges were pre-existing. So it was a different issue. It's like hiding a water treatment plant or something.
And like I said, we will, as long as we continue to get these items, we will still have this back and forth discussion.
Friendly conversation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Healthy discussion. And again, like I said, in how I've resolved things in the past was if we saw something that we felt was needed to be addressed, we elevated it beyond our board to see if there was a better solution, a change to the codification of the standards.
Well, I have no problem in having some conversation with some folks about this outside of here on the commission.
I'm not including this in the motion, but.
Right. No, I'm saying, but that doesn't solve these folks' problem right now.
Absolutely not. And to
I wanna
go back to your
focus
original
on-
question, I would like to maintain the motion that I made without the amendment.
Mr. Chair, I would also like to maintain my second. Mr. Hadaway brings up some interesting points, and I would like to discuss them further. However, the point remains that even though we are supposed to take each application on its own merits independently, not 15 minutes ago, we approved a nearly identical variance for a lot in nearly the exact same configuration for 4 feet. If we were going to have, I don't know how else to describe it, a crisis of conscience about how we go about our business, it should have been after the first one or before the first one was approved, not now that we've already approved one that's even closer than this one. Furthermore, I'd like to say, as far as how we do business, point A is the Seminole County Land Development Code is the Land Development Code, and we do everything by the book and don't deviate from it whatsoever. Point B is we rubber stamp everything that comes before us for consideration. Somewhere in between there is the line. That's up to each one of us on the board, those who showed up, individually to use our judgment to decide where that line is.
That's why we have the board. I get that. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay. Motion carries 3-1, it's approved. All right, next item.
Item number 3 was a variance request for lots 32 and 33 on West Airport Boulevard, but it has been withdrawn by staff.
Okay.
Item number 4 is continued to December 5th meeting. The applicants weren't unable to attend tonight's meeting. So that leaves us at item number 5, and that is a request for a side street north setback variance from 25 feet to 0 feet for a fence in the R1 AAA Single Family Dwelling District and the Ross Lake Shores subdivision located at 100 Ross Lake Lane. The subject property is corner lot and considered to have 2 fronts for setback purposes. The front of the house faces Ross Lake Lane, and the State Road 46 side is where the variance is being sought. Traffic engineering has no objection to the placement of the fence as it relates to site visibility. The replacement privacy fence is 20 feet from the edge of pavement, and there isn't a sidewalk in place at this time. There also wasn't a permit on file for the existing fence. There have not been any prior variances for the subject property, and this concludes my presentation.
Do you know if they're planning on installing sidewalks through there?
I do not.
They never have, but
Mr. Chair, point of order. After we approved the variance for item number 2, the applicants for item number 2 were not notified that they didn't have to stay for the rest of the meeting if they didn't wish
oh
to.
yeah, once your item's done, you're welcome to leave. You're welcome to stay too, we're not throwing you out.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
All right, any questions for staff? Yes, sir.
Ms. Keeloff, I'm sorry, my fault, I wasn't listening well. You had said something about there was not a permit for something?
There wasn't a permit for the existing fence.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions for staff?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just real quick, on the site plan survey, it looks like, are they,
That's it.
the existing fence that is from where the circular, what's for all intents and purposes called driveway, to the corner, that stays in place, that's the existing fence, and they're just replacing the section that's highlighted?
I don't know. We'd have to ask the
Okay,
applicant.
thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
Well, I guess that begs the question then, is there an open code enforcement issue?
There is not.
Okay.
Okay, is the applicant present? Oh, you again.
There's actually a reserved seat back there for
It's a
me.
good night for fence contractors.
We'd put you on the
Yes, it
board,
is.
but you'd have to recuse yourself.
I know, I would never do that. Hi.
Hi, state your
Okay,
name
so
and address,
It's
please.
Maria Arevalo with On the Line Fence, 600 Northern Way, Winter Springs, Florida.
I would like to say, I appreciate the fact that you come for these variances each and
It
every
is
time.
extremely important. and
Because
this
we
is
don't
why
see very
I
many
do it.
fence companies in here, and
Yeah.
there's a lot more of them that should be doing what you're doing.
Exactly,
Thank
and I
you.
appreciate that, thank you.
All right.
So for this particular client, 2 things that I wanted to point out was that fence is like a decrepit 20-year-old fence that we're replacing. Beyond that, in that 20 feet is a huge ditch, so they'll never put a sidewalk there because it's for drainage. The big concern is that that's where those new roundabouts are, that they're putting in the exchange. So that turn is like right there by their yard. And then the other thing is, we're only replacing to the line. We would never go past the front corners of the house. So we're just replacing the 6-foot height fence.
So this is an existing fence, they're wanting to place a new fence in the same location?
Correct. It'll be in the same location. We're not bumping it out. And the little 4-rail fence that they already have that was already there, that stays in place. We're not replacing that or anything.
Any questions for the applicant's representative? You're in deep thought, Mr. Hathaway, I can tell.
Oh, no. I have questions, but they'd be better suited for the applicant, not their agent.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone to speak in support of the request? Is there anyone to speak in opposition to the request? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a question for staff. The original fence that's proposed to be replaced, the one that was 10 or 20 years old, was that installed by the current owner of the property, or was that a private?
We wouldn't know that.
I'm sorry, you have to come back up front and speak so we can get you on the recording.
No, they actually just bought the house like 6 months ago. It was already there, so they inherited the issue.
Understood, thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, while the applicant's representative is walking away, maybe I could ask her to come back, because I have one more question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Come on down.
The next one is mine too, so I may as well just stay up here.
Well, you won't go far then.
So this goes back to our previous discussion. I'm looking at the survey. If you maybe just show that back on the screen again, I'd appreciate that. The fence that is not highlighted, that is basically from the, again, circular drive to the front corner.
Correct.
You're asking for a 0 being, but you want to put it right on the property line. That survey is not showing that fence on the property line. It looks like it's inside, again, I don't want to estimate, but it's offset to the inside of the property line,
There's actually a double fence there right now.
a double fence.
Yes. So there's a 4-foot fence that runs the full length, and then a 6-foot fence behind it, which is why it's not showing that fence. But it's relatively close to the property line.
Well, there's a difference, and the reason I'm asking you this question is we just had this discussion. So when I look at this stuff, the idea is for the variance criteria, is to request the minimum, or we will grant the minimum variance that, we can do. 0 is not the minimum. 0 is the absolute maximum that we would grant. So
Correct,
when
but
when I see this, when I see this survey and I see a fence that's set inside the property line, I'm trying to establish why we should agree to allow it to go, whatever that distance is, a foot, 2 feet, onto the, basically moving it 0 instead of keeping it off the property line to the inside.
Correct, and if you actually look at the survey, it's actually about 5 inches inside, and we'll be more than happy to put it back exactly where the 5 inches are at. We don't have a problem with that. So, and that's on the survey, actually.
So when you talk about 5 inches off the property line, they might as well, because it's hard to measure, typically they'll ask for 0.
No, I understood, but again, it goes back, again, what we just had this discussion, that
Sure.
where I may draw the line is when we go the complete maximum. When we don't,
I got you.
so when I
Okay.
see that it's inside, I don't see why we should put it on the property line.
Right.
That's my question.
Sure. In this case, you got a ditch that's never going to be anything but a ditch. It's never going to be a sightly ditch. And that any property on the other side of that fence is useless for anything but mowing.
Understood.
So
I'm not trying to set argument.
No, I'm just-
I'm basically continuing the conversation that we've had for the last 25 minutes. So-
Yeah, and my thinking on it is this is not a self-imposed problem here in the sense that this massive widening of the road out there and the expansion and everything that goes with it. I'm seeing that's an intrusion on the property owner, and that's what really affects my thinking.
I wouldn't
about
be
what-
surprised that prior to the road widening, if you couldn't even see that fence,
The aerial.
because they took a lot of trees out through there. So,
Understood. No, I mean, I made the second, so I'm asking these questions.
no, I'm with
And
you.
that's fair question, yeah.
I'm digging into the brain of Mr. Hathaway. so-
Oh, good Lord, man. Get some waiters.
All right. Any other
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Any other discussion? You can have a seat if you like. You can sit in the front and save you some steps.
You just put a name in
Okay.
that seat in the back.
We have no more discussion. Everybody in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries, it's approved. Good luck. All right, next item.
Item number 6 is a request for a side street west setback variance from 25 feet to 3.5 feet for a fence in the R1A Single Family Dwelling District in the Lost Creek subdivision located at 1252 Valley Creek Run. The subject property is a corner lot and considered to have 2 front yards for setback purposes. The front of the house faces Valley Creek Run. The Maiden Woodway is where the variance is being sought. Traffic engineering has no objection to the placement of the fence as it relates to site visibility. The Lost Creek Homeowners Association approved the proposed fence, and the existing privacy fence is 4 feet from the sidewalk and 11 feet at the closest point from the edge of pavement. A building code enforcement violation, CV 22-92, was issued for the fence, resulting in the necessity of this variances, necessity for this variance. There have not been any prior variances for the subject property, but I do want to discuss, because the applicant submitted some documentation, and it's going to come up on their presentation. So I wanted to go ahead and just get any questions out of the way for that. There are, go ahead and go to the applicant. Okay, so the 2 highlighted, they're demonstrating that the 2 yellow are where neighbors received variances. Only one of those received variances. The red square is where the variance is being sought, and the green one is where a variance was approved. Those were mentioned addresses that were brought up when submitted, so I just wanted to go ahead and just bring that to your attention since it was mentioned.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Also, other documentation that wasn't submitted for this presentation, and will never be, is they submitted letters of support for a previous variance for the lot that was highlighted in green, and I will never bring to the board something that, letters of support that were for another variance. So that was not in your presentation if it's brought up. So that concludes my presentation. Should you have any questions, I'm here to answer any you may have.
Any questions for staff?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
just, can we bring up the, I apologize, bring up the survey? I seem to say that a lot. Why is that picture different than what I have in mind?
Because that one doesn't have the fence on
The red lines?
it.
Yeah. I guess because my question was about the one that's in our package. So that survey shows an existing, looks like fence that's 5.1 feet off of the property line on the left side, and, slightly less on the back side, and it looks like is the red line that's in our package?
The one with the red line is what they submitted for the variance. This is just a copy of their survey. This, the wrong one was grabbed for the presentation.
Okay, so I guess my question is the fence that's now currently 5.1 feet off the fence being moved inside, so it's actually being less, it's being moved closer to the home? Okay.
What was the answer to the question?
Yes, it is. For the survey, their site plan, you can see that it shows that it has an existing wood fence, and they're bringing it closer. It's hard to see.
Well, I thought that they're what's in your, they say that it's 3.5 feet, but I just don't think it's to scale.
That's what I'm trying to establish.
Yeah, I
It's
just
showing
don't
an
think that
existing
it's to
fence at
scale because,
5.1.
what's existing says 5, but the request was shorter, but
That was my confusion. I was trying to establish whether we're actually moving the fence closer to the sidewalk or we're pulling it closer to the house. That was what I was
yes,
trying to discern.
you're correct.
That's a good question for our applicant's representative when she comes up.
Exactly.
Oh, it's not yours. Okay. Any other questions for staff?
Or maybe not.
Come on down. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, good evening. This is Marta Garcia. I'm the owner with my husband of 1252 Valley Creek Run.
Okay. to start with, are you moving the fence closer to the road or further away?
We're not moving it closer or further, we're just replacing the wooden fence that had been there since 2013. So we're not taking more space and we're not taking less. We really just replaced it where it was because it was rotten, there were nails poking out of it.
How long have y'all been in the house?
We moved in August of 2020.
So you
No, sorry, September of 2020, I think. Yeah, we closed in August.
Okay, did you do the fence yourself, the replacement?
No, we had a company do it,
Hired a
and they
company
filed an
and-
initial permit with the county.
That's,
They applied for a permit?
Yes, they did.
And did they tell you at the time of application you needed a variance?
No, they did not. They just told us it was denied and they would withdraw it and to move on with life. So, then we've started the variance process after we got a code enforcement violation.
All right. All right, what would you like to tell us?
Well, I guess this is a story that you guys have been hearing for the whole night, but our community was not built for corner lots to have setbacks of 25 feet. No corner lot is able to have a fence if that setback is enforced. So most of our neighbors, and that was the presentation, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but one of your staff members was showing, we don't know if they had variances or not, but we know that the 2 yellow lots have fences that are even closer to the sidewalk than ours. We know that exactly that one. Yeah, the property, which is 3841 Heartleaf Plaza, Mr. Dan Coleman was kind enough to tell us that he had requested a variance back in 2014 and it was granted for him. So we spoke with Julie from the variance office to see what could be done, and she said that it would carry weight that one, our HOA board had said in 2014, which is the minutes that your staff member did not set forth, back in the day supported it, and they actually said that that was the standards that they wanted for the community. They wanted wide vinyl fences, and in the corner lots, they would like them placed exactly as Mr. Coleman's fence was placed. So that's why we submitted it. We also requested our HOA board for permission to install our fence, and it was granted. And we also have an HOA board declaration that we filed with our variance petition that said that they are in support of the setback that we're requesting, and that was submitted together with our package. The issue with our property is that we have a dock and we have a pool. So right now, how the setback is set, if we were to have the fence the way that the code establishes, the fence would actually be inside of our property, inside of my baby's nursery, so it doesn't really work. And at the very edge of our corner, because the line is not straight, it would actually be on top of the pool, which is disadvised. So for us not to have a fence, that creates attractive nuisance. We have a lot of children in the neighborhood, and we would hate for anything to happen. I mean, my dog is a golden retriever, but still he's an animal, so I would hate for something to happen with our dog or with our pool. We have a small child. We hope to have more children in the future. It is very unsafe to not have a fence in property. So we would definitely want to be able to have this variance request granted. We also have an issue that this constitutes a play hazard for our neighborhood, and this has been brought up at several meetings. We have a bus stop that stops right in front of our property. If we have a big space for children to gather and play, this is the entrance to our community. There is a high potential for danger. So that's why our community has never wanted the corner lots to leave a lot of space in our community, because we don't want play areas to be created, since we have other areas in our community where children can gather, away from cars and away from potential accidents. Not only that, but during Hurricane Ian, we were fortunate enough that the breeze actually hit the fence and some posts came, down. So it actually hit the fence and not our house. So if you ask me, the fence has come in handy. So we are lucky that nothing major happened. Only some posts came down, and our community is very tight-knit, so they actually helped us put them back up. So if not only for safety and because our HOA in our community wants this fence up, we would request leniency from this commission, and that our request for the setback be granted.
Questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, I'm looking at the picture that we kind of showed
Yes.
before. It looks like you're increasing the fence towards the front of the property?
It was moved towards the front, yes, but not towards the side of the street. But yes, we took a little bit towards the front of the house, but that we were told was not an issue. It's the side setback that was.
Correct, but, I mean, you moved it to within, looks like, you said it's approximately 17 feet from the front of the house?
That's correct.
Okay, from where it was before. And they put it back in the same location relative to the side of the property?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone to speak in support of the request? Is there anyone to speak in opposition to the request? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second? No second? Okay, the motion is going to die for lack of a second. Do we have a motion? We need to have some discussion. I mean, our choices are simple: approve it where it's at, deny it outright, or move it to another location. That's the only three choices we have.
Or could move to continue it.
Pretty sure I asked this question before, but we can grant the variance at a different distance than what is asked for in the
Correct, as
application.
long as we do not exceed what was advertised. We can't make it closer to this property line, but we can shorten it. So that's why I say our three choices on fences is always either approve what's asked, deny it completely, or find a happy medium that we can live with.
Mr. Chair?
Mhm.
I'm going to do this just so we can have a conversation. I'll move to
Okay.
deny.
Okay, we have a motion to deny. Do we have a second? I'll tell you what, I have the ability, I just don't usually do it. I'll second it for the purpose of discussion. I don't like to make motions or seconds while we have enough other people to do it. But, okay, so let's have a discussion.
Now, as the movement, and y'all, please forgive me for harping on too much, but to pick up on a point that I had raised earlier tonight, if we look at the second paragraph of comment 4 from the applicant, I'm sorry, the first paragraph in response, just describe our literal interpretation on and on. What the applicant shares with us is, first, given the fact that the variance request we are petitioning for has already been granted to other neighbors in our community in the past, our property would be unfairly prejudiced if the same was now denied. And I share that to reiterate the point that by being quick and generous to grant variances, we are creating an expectation in the community. This is another example of that. That if people look throughout their neighborhoods and say, oh goodness, everyone's getting a variance, I'm sure I'll get a variance, they would then be reasonable, not being planners or lawyers or anything, to come before us and say, why can't I have what my neighbors get? And that becomes then a very difficult question for us as a board to answer to people. So I just share that to say, I'll just say this and I'll leave it there. Say that, leave it there.
So the essence of, when you look at the criteria, is there a hardship? That's supposed to be one of our factors. There's supposed to be a hardship not created by the applicant. And Steve Coover said it one night in the meeting, He said a lot of variances are passed because there's no opposition to the variance, and there's support amongst the community, so they get approved. When reality is, if they were challenged in court, the court would reverse them and send it back. It's happened, there was an appeal on a decision actually Board of County Commissioners made where the courts reversed it and sent it back. We denied something, they appealed, they approved it, and the courts reversed it. And they, if, it's something everybody needs to think long and hard about. If we're going to take a strict line with folks that every variance is going to have to prove the hardship, there won't hardly be a variance in this county passed. Be real, because most of them don't have a lot of hardship they want. And we often look at it as there's not, the neighbors don't mind, there's no harm. A lot of times you can't even see wherever it is from the road. So fences are different because they're right out there on the road, so they tend to get looked at harder by people. But if we're going to be consistently in line with what the letter of that is, then we need to be consistent. And if we're going to try to be reasonable, which I believe that's what the county commission wants us to, that's why they have us, then we have to find a way to be reasonable. I don't believe we should rubber stamp every request that ever comes. There's some requests that come in here, as soon as I read it, I'm hopping up and down thinking, no way. I think in one case of the guy that had the storage pods stacked on top of one another, 10 feet from his property line, next to his neighbor's house. Well, I understand his son made it for, I think it was a workshop or something, that I wouldn't want that next to my house. So I understood so.
Mr. Chair, given the rest of the agenda, you might want to.
No, I got it.
Yeah,
I got it. All right, so we have any other discussion?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Given that this fence is a replacement of an existing fence, that it is, where it lies right now is the line of the previous fence, right?
If permitted fence?
Hmm?
The previous fence that it's replacing was permitted?
Was it?
No, they have a
If it was permitted, we wouldn't have a
No, the
variance.
previous
Yeah,
fence
so it's not a
wasn't
permitted fence that
permitted.
it's replacing.
Okay.
Because if it had been permitted and went through the process, it should have had a variance and we wouldn't be sitting here now if it was one in the same place.
I was going to say, because typically, when we get a variance request for the replacement of an existing fence right on top of the footprint of the old fence, typically those get approved. And if this was submitted to us at that time, would we have approved it or not? However, the old fence never was approved in its old footprint or in the current footprint right now. So that litmus test doesn't.
And legal precedent on that, as I understand, talking to one of our county attorneys a while back, is if something goes in erroneously, the courts do find that it doesn't justify without due cause approving it just because it's there. They tear down shopping malls and apartment complexes because they're mistakes.
Oh, yes.
Even if it's the government's mistake, it doesn't matter. So it's a pretty strict criteria they use.
Yeah, even if staff tells them it's okay, but it's not okay, it's
Still, yeah. So expensive mistake, then they end up in court after their money. All right. So,
And I think that's what should be, so many of these cases. I mean,
All right.
should have a, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, that's all right. All right, we need to get through this because we have 4 other items.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
For the purposes of the discussion, my concerns is that I'm still, and again, it's the engineer part of me that can't figure out the math. If in our staff report, we have a 25-foot setback, which says, it's stated in there is reduced to 15 foot for a corner lot. Is that correct?
Under certain zoning classifications, we allow it to be reduced to 15 feet. I think it's R1.
Yeah, it's, and I apologize, it's on page 52 of the report, bullet number 2. You know, it says side 7.5 feet inside, 25 feet side, provided, however, that the 25-foot minimum side yard shall be reduced to 15 for corner lots due to the location on intersections, without restrictions or site limitations. So I guess I didn't I've never seen that paragraph before. And so, the reason I asked this question is, it's 15 feet, and I do, you know, the best math I can in my head is that the house sits 22.3 feet from the property line, and the existing fence, supposedly where it went back, is 5.1. That's 17 feet, plus or minus, with a 15-foot setback, only leaves a 2.5-foot variance. So I'm unsure where the 3.5 came from. And and again, I'm just, I know it has really no bearing at this point. I probably should have asked that earlier, but.
We just go by what they put on the application.
Yeah, and the reason I ask that, regardless of whether we deny or, you know, whatever the purview of the board is, whether or not the language in the denial or the approval, you know, document that we have, it needs to be amended.
Right, if when, during inspection, say the board approves it at the 3.5 feet, if the fence is actually at 2, it'll get denied, and they'll still have their code violation.
Okay.
So
And
it's
again,
up to them to do their math.
I'm looking at it, you know, the survey shows the fence at 5.1, and we're being told that it's going back in the same location.
Right.
You know, that's my question, is how we're coming up with the math.
Right. I can see the site plan is very confusing. If you look at it, it does look like they're pulling it back, but if you look at the property going north, you can see where there's a little bit of a clip that goes, that could be what they're talking about, 3.5 feet at the shortest point.
On the
You can
on the
see
back
it.
corner?
Yeah, you can see how it comes in a little bit.
Yeah, and again, I apologize, I used to draw surveys, so I read that as that the fence corner is 2.2 feet from the corner back there. So that one dimension that's in that corner
Oh, I
going.
see that too, yeah.
So I understand, and like I said, I still don't, I couldn't find where the 3.5 was from,
Yeah,
so.
I don't either.
And we have had people come in and ask for a variance, and then come back and say, I made a mistake, I didn't ask for enough. And then they have to try to argue for a
So,
new variance, so it
going-
does happen.
Yeah, I understand. Beyond my math, you know, issues that I'm having, the other side of it, and when I asked the applicant, because they're moving the fence forward from where its existing location is, you know, I agree to a certain extent that there are, you know, in my mind, I'm not going to quote a number that I like to see off the sidewalk, but the sidewalk comes into the property, encroaches onto the property at that point, which would reduce that. You know, again, it's bringing the fence forward and closer to the sidewalk. So that is another concern, you know, that obviously we're going to have my discussion part of. So.
Okay, any more discussion?
I just don't look at this, it's, you know, again, it's not, we're not replacing the fence in kind in the exact same location. It is being moved and adjusted, it's further encroaching, blah, blah, blah. So,
All right, we have a motion on the floor to deny the request. So all in favor of the motion, say aye. 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 So the request is denied. I understand completely what everybody's saying. I would like to, hey, Kathy, I want to see if after the holidays, because you can't do anything between November and December, maybe we can have a legal meeting of, not necessarily here, we sit down and do whatever legal presence we have to do so we can sit down with all the board members and have a discussion about these fences. Maybe January.
If I may.
Try to
Sorry.
get it. Sure. Your request is denied. You have
I
15
understand.
days to appeal it to the Board of County Commissioners. If you want to appeal it, get with staff, they'll help you do that, okay? Good luck to you. All right, next item.
Okay, item number 7 is a request for 1, a rear yard setback variance from 30 feet to 5 feet, and 2, a side yard east setback variance from 10 feet to 7.5 feet for a detached garage in the R1 AAA Single Family Dwelling District. In the Forest Park Estates subdivision located at 212 Berry Court, the proposed detached garage will be 525 square feet and will encroach 25 feet into the required rear yard setback and 2.5 feet into the required side yard east setback. One letter of opposition was received on October 23rd from the rear neighbor located at 224 Cambridge Drive that I was emailed to all of you, and Mr. Wright, I put one on because I wasn't sure
Yeah,
your
thank you.
email, it came back in your email. In the letter of opposition from the rear neighbor, they stated something about there's a sidewalk easement back there, but that is located in the Wekiva Hunt Club subdivision and in their plat on the rear neighbor's property. It is not on this property. Not that that has any bearing, but I just wanted to let you know because it was mentioned in the opposition letter.
All right. So there's no sidewalk right now, and there's no sidewalk
There is a
easement
sidewalk back there,
behind there.
but it's in the opposition's yard,
No,
On the
I
other side
get
of the
it.
fence.
on the other side of the
Right,
fence.
that's
yeah.
what I mean.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, the sidewalk is not located in a separate parcel. It is located on an access easement within the
It is
neighbor's
located
yard?
through all the rear properties.
By
Understood.
easement.
By easement, yes,
Okay, not a separate property.
but not this property.
Not the other.
Interesting. You
It's
see it all if you sit
It's
here long
part
enough.
of, it's very common in Wekiva Hunt Club that they have those pedestrian sidewalks. We let them put up fences, we just don't let them block that easement or the sidewalk
Okay.
because it's in the rear.
But this would, to be clear, this would not block the easement.
No,
We're concerned.
it would not.
Okay.
Also, another question, this development that this residence is located at is a separate development entirely from
Yes.
Wekiva? It's not part of their HOA, anything like that?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions for staff? All right, is the applicant present? Hi, good evening. Thank you for your patience. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yep, Barry Graham, 212 Berry Court, Longwood, Florida.
Barry on Barry.
It was
Nice.
designed that way, believe it or not.
Okay,
My daddy's a developer, and he developed that back in the 70s, and he needed 3 names to put on there, so me and my 2 sisters have our own courts.
awesome.
So,
Works for me. All right, what would you like to tell us, sir?
well, I was trying to, I've got, there's basically 6 people in our family, and we have 6 cars. They're all driving. My kids, I've got triplets they're going to be 25 in 2 days, and they live with us, and they go to school. And the issue is that somebody's got to park, or sometimes 2 cars got to park in the cul-de-sac. And what I'm trying to do is basically keep the cul-de-sac open for emergency vehicles or whatever, and be able to park everything on my own property. And just trying to, with just trying to kind of keep everything organized and keep everything as far as that goes there. I mean, I don't have a lot to say. I just pretty much, speak for itself. Be happy to answer any questions though.
I have a question for you. I'm just looking, just based on the survey we have in front of us. If you took that garage, turned it, you could place it against the end of your house on that side and just turn the driveway into it. You see what I'm saying? The part of the house next to the shed that shoots up on kind of northeast?
Yeah, basically the house is kind of designed to go on the lot so that one side, I'm trying to parallel that right side there with the property line to kind of square off with that, whereas you would drive down the driveway and pull right into it. Because my garage, of course, is on that side too of the house. And just trying to kind of figure out where, design. I'm a general contractor by trade, and I've built this house and multiple homes in this subdivision as well. So, just trying to visualize the best use for it and that type of thing there.
I wanted to also note that no matter how he positions that garage, by the way we measure a rear yard setback, he's still going to have to apply for variance.
Oh, I realize that.
Okay, I just
thinking
wanted
it could be
to-
maybe possibly a lesser variance, that's why I asked the question.
Part of the issue of that is the space between the corner of the garage that's closest to the house and the house. That space there gets a little crowded, to be able to get access to the backyard. I'd still be able to, if I ever had to get a piece of equipment or something back there, whatever, I'd still like to be able to get, have that access back there without, be so crowded that I can't get anything back in there, type of thing.
You're definitely not getting anything by the left side of the house.
No, sir, not at all.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Yes, sir.
And my thinking would be very similar to what you were saying, and I guess, Mr. Graham, I guess my question is, and similar to what the chair has asked, is it seems like the positioning of where you're wanting to put this newer garage isn't being so much driven by the funky shape of the lot, more as you're wanting the entrance and exit to it to be consistent with, parallel with the existing driveway.
Correct, basically to come right in there and be able to, bring two cars in there and still have room between the house and the garage there. And that 7.5 foot on the right side, that's a utility easement, and I'm pretty much right up against there, and even at that, I'm still not really square with the garage that's there now. I'm kind of a little bit off angle as far as that goes,
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Hey, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Again, looking at the survey, there's a distance that's kind of written in red between your existing garage corner and the new structure. Do you know what that dimension is?
I'm sorry, say again?
The dimension that's shown from the corner of the existing one-story concrete block residence, which I'm assuming is the corner of your garage,
Yes.
to the structure, I can't tell if that's a 10 or a 19.
I believe it's a 19, to tell you the
19.
truth.
And what's the minimum distance that you need to be able to get, as you said?
Well, that right at that corner there, that's where my power and everything comes in at that point there. So I mean, the closer you bring it towards the house, the more closer that angle's going to get at that corner as far as trying to get a two-car garage in there. So in other words, you're going to be more chance of bumping the corner of the actual house coming out of the garage. The tighter you get that way there, it just kind of closes in.
Understood. And again, the reason I'm asking the question is, responsibilities in my mind is to grant the minimum
Correct.
Variance.
I
And I'm just
understand.
wondering, without discussing changing the orientation of the building, I understand that, but the 5 foot off the rear, if you were to bring it 2.5 feet closer, so we were 7.5 feet off the back, how does that change? Again, as you said, you want space to be able to get back in there if you need to. Is there another number that's acceptable between the building and your existing residence where we could increase the variance, or the distance from the rear and decrease the variance, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I know that I measured everything based on what would, if we would access back there and any type of access. And the issue is coming back there, it's not like you're driving straight through a straight thing. You're actually having to, if you bring any equipment or whatever, it's got to make that turn to get in there. So you got to have, plenty of space to kind of make that turn to get in there. It's not like it's a straight shot type of thing. So that's kind of what we looked at is and I know that the 5 foot is right at the extreme, and then from there, it obviously starts coming back based on that angle, But to answer your question, to make that turn and stuff like that, if you were to, need to get some back there, whatever, that's kind of how we come up with that number.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone to speak in support of the request? Is there anyone to speak in opposition to the request? We have a motion.
Chair, motion to deny.
We have a motion to deny. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
My discussion is, I don't believe it's the minimum necessary off the rear. You know, I think not discussing orientation because it still requires a variance no matter what, but in this case, I think the applicant, again, could pull that thing forward in the same geographical location and lessen the variance that we would have to require and increase the minimum distance, that's all. And, you know, we have a letter of objection that there is a, whether it's public, private, doesn't matter, there is an access, looks like sidewalk on the aerial that I was looking at, that if we can increase the distance away from that, a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, I would be more inclined to be, in theory, approving it.
Yes, sir.
Not withdrawing my second, but first off, I find the objector's letter unpersuasive, and I'm not moved by it. Would you be, and if you say no, I still have my second, but would you have interest, rather than just saying no to this applicant and, well, let time pass till he can reapply at different numbers, would you be willing to amend your motion to approve at numbers that you think work best, realizing that the applicant, if he doesn't like those numbers, doesn't have to build, he's not required to build at those numbers, he can always say no, and I'll come back later and reapply. Would you be open to that idea?
Yes, but, you know,
And I'm going to defer to you because you know it better than I do.
You know my history here is that I don't feel I'm the judge that I can just come up with a definitive number and say, my line of questioning to the applicant was, can we go something less? He said no. That was kind of definitive for me at that point that, you know, I had one direction in my thought. So I'm not, I can't tell you what my magic number is because that's not my, you know, that's not my role here to tell him. So I can ask him if he would consider it, and if he did, then, you know, I probably have a different thought process, you know.
Are you open to asking if the chair approves, asking Mr. Graham again?
I have no objection. I would like to have a definitive answer and move forward.
So what he's asking is, in lieu of us, so they're suggesting if it's denied, then your only recourse would either be to resubmit it or appeal it to the Board of County Commission.
Right.
He's asking, is there a lesser setback that you could live with and just put it to bed right now?
Well, can we go with let's say on the back there, can we go with a 7 foot instead of a 5?
I'm amendable to, if you feel like you can go to 7 feet.
I mean,
That would satisfy my feeling that I'm not
Yeah.
granting, or I'm looking
Yeah.
at the minimum that we accept.
I mean, I'm sure I could probably live with that.
Okay.
We do some adjustments and stuff like that, whatever we need to do, but, you know, I think that, I mean, we're 7.5 on one side, and that would put a 7 in the back, and I mean, I think I could live with that.
I understand your situation. My parents used to have a garage that was very similarly situated, and the corner of the house was like, I was always worried I was going to hit it. And then I listened to my father talk about how he knocked his house down.
Yeah, well, I know, that's the thing. So anyways.
Based
Okay.
on, Mr. Chair, based on that, you know, the applicant's, you know, agreement in the sense.
So we're going to withdraw, hold on, let's withdraw the original motion, second and motion, and redo the motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve
Okay.
the motion with the change that the rear setback is, or the rear distance for the structure in lieu of 5 feet is now 7 feet.
Okay. Do we have a second? We have a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. This approved at 7 feet, sir.
Okay.
Good luck to you.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. Y'all have a good day.
All right, next item?
Item number 8 is a variance request for 3651 Creeks Bend Court located in the Creeks Bend subdivision. The request is for an east side street setback reduction from 25 feet to 15 feet for a privacy fence in the R1AA zoning district. The subject property is a corner lot and has 2 front yards for setback purposes. The front of the house faces Creeks Bend Court. The Creeks Bend Drive side is where the variance is being sought. The request is to construct a 6-foot vinyl privacy fence 10 feet into the required 25-foot side street setback. The proposed privacy fence is approximately 17 feet from the sidewalk and 38 feet from the edge of pavement. The privacy fence encroaches into a power easement, and that building permitting will be required to meet the criteria for placement within a estoppel letter. Traffic engineering has no objection to the placement of the fence as it relates to site visibility. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
There's an existing fence in the photograph. Is that the fence we're talking about, or is it replacing?
They're replacing the fence.
Replacing it in the
Yes.
same location?
Slightly off. It
Slight.
looks like they're trying to straighten it out.
Okay, that's why I was asking, because the green line is not quite on that line.
Right.
Okay.
And also, Mr. Chair, the fence is flush with the wall of the house.
Right. I
Yes,
see
and
it.
it's 15 feet at the closest point.
Right.
in the
The
very
new
back.
one, the new one brings it out in a straight line from the house as opposed to angling it.
Right.
Okay. Any questions for staff? All right, is the applicant present? Oh, now it's your turn again. Please state your name and address for the record.
It's Maria with On the Line Fence, 600 Northern Way, Winter Springs, 32708. I just want to replace it where it's at. That's actually the only access point for lawnmowers, their pool equipment to be maintained, because on the other side, it's really tight and their AC is over there, and there's no gate on the other side. So that's the only.
So are you swinging the end over or just right where it's at?
I mean, I'd like to, I can leave it where it's at. I'd like to straighten it out because it's not going to hinder anything because it's going with the wall of the house.
How much distance are you talking?
I'm
It's
going
hard
to
to tell
say.
on there. Looks like
Give
it's
me-
a foot.
It's like a foot, yeah, it's like a foot. It's just, this was like a home done fence back in the day, the old fence. So they kind of like to play it safe, probably swung it in on that angle there. And obviously, if we find that there's any reason why they had to do that, like if we find pipes or anything, we're very responsible with that and we will leave it where it's at. So we don't have a problem with that.
You mean you don't want to move their pipes?
No,
Oh, just checking.
no.
From my speed.
Yes. Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Okay. All right. Thank you.
And off the record, if you guys ever want some feedback and consulting, I would be more than happy to volunteer to speak to you because there is a magic number. So if you guys ever want, I'll be more than happy to meet with you guys and talk to you guys a little bit more about
Well,
that
One was always.
as a professional. Yeah,
Kathy, can we invite her to our meeting?
Just me.
yep.
I mean, it'll be.
I mean, I've been doing
It'll be
this so
done in
long.
public and everything, so
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
we
like-
can't meet outside of.
Oh, no,
So-
that's what I'm saying.
Well, I'm
like,
saying, so that's the perfect time, because I want to
Yeah.
discuss this, and if you have a solution, I'm open to it.
And I'm a preferred vendor for Seminole County too, so.
Okay. All right. What is your question for staff, sir?
Again, the discussion was putting it back in the exact location, not necessarily showing the green line that is being represented in our on the survey in our application. Still requires a variance.
Yes,
Yes.
because if they had a private.
So how, I guess my, and I apologize again, the question would be is how do we don't know what that number is, how do we quantify it?
Where
do
the
we-
existing fence is.
Okay, so we don't have to necessarily state a number of the variance request.
We have to state a number. That's what they're going to use.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, we
How do we
absolutely-
determine that number?
Once that fence is gone, you don't know where it was.
The applicant is who has to provide us the setback that they're wanting to put the fence at.
So in our,
So if they can't give that to us tonight, we have to.
so I guess what I'm saying is, if I look at the
The application.
denial or the approval order, it specifically says, a side street setback variance from 25 to 15. How do we change that number, so that because we don't know what it is?
Well, it's 15 on one corner of the house, and it goes about a foot further out on the other, so
So
that's
do we
why
say
they
about
have
a foot
15.
in
They
the
use the well, I think
They've
that's,
applied for 15, and that's what it's got to be,
Yeah, it
right?
has to be at.
Yeah.
Right.
At the end of the day.
That's what I'm
Right.
asking. I mean, we just amended the previous.
well, we can make it more restrictive, but not less.
Right.
So we can't make it 14, but yes, we could make it.
No, understood. But like I said,
But what your issue is on this is, one corner of the house looks like it's probably right at, I don't know. It's hard to say.
We have to take it at its closest point.
Right. So it's hard to tell what that is from there. Me, it's just me personally. We're talking about a foot. It's not a giant number, and I don't know that you'll be able to tell when they're done, really. And I understand why they want to do it, to square off the front. It's kind of odd to have your fence angling away from the house.
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, there's no question. I guess I'm just looking at it, for the purposes of how do we make our motion, how do we amend the language to say, I've never seen us say, put it back to the existing location. We usually have.
No, we deal with
Finites.
exact numbers
Yes.
on the setback,
Yes.
because like I say, once that fence is out and they throw some sod down, you won't know where that old fence was.
Mr. Chair, it says right here on the first page of the application, the bottom bullet on the page, 85, the proposed privacy fence is approximately 17 feet from the sidewalk.
Right, and 38 feet from the edge of pavement,
Right.
So the sidewalk is not always
the property line.
Right.
So the easement, the sidewalk doesn't have to sit on your property. In front of my house, the county owns about 10 feet of the ground, and they can put a sidewalk there if they choose to. They've done it recently on some of the streets.
All right.
So my property, so the sidewalk, sometimes the sidewalk is the edge of the property line, and sometimes it's not. It just depends, it's going to depend on the subdivision.
So the application as is for the fence in its crooked original configuration, correct?
The request is for it to be, for us, the request is for it to be 15 feet.
From the closest edge.
On the property line.
From the property line.
Okay, so,
And that's what the number that the applicant gives to us at its closest point. As you can see, this is not a symmetrical
yeah.
lot, so we have to take it from its closest point. That's what
I
the
don't
variance
think we
has.
can get into language where we say in the same location, because we can't prove what that location is later.
Right.
That's all I'm trying to.
No, I get you. I understood exactly what
I
you're
just told you
saying.
that I don't want to come up with my own number, and now I'm asking you, how do we come up with our own number? It's on you, sir.
All right.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
the way I see it, we can either approve the application as it stands,
At the
or,
request they asked for, and they can put
Yeah.
the fence anywhere within that setback they want.
Right.
They can move it further out or be right on the setback what we give them. We're just approving the setback, where they, in the end, if they decide they want to turn around and put it 20 feet off the sidewalk instead of 15, they can do that. They're
Still
not
do that.
bound.
Can we go back?
They just can't put it at 14.
Can we go back to how we did this, to solve the last one? If the applicant's representative came back and said she could put it at 17 feet or 16.5, and we would have a definitive number that we could work with, would that work?
There might be a problem, though, if she may not be authorized to speak on behalf of her client.
She's speaking for him now, so.
Well, we can ask.
Well, that's a change, though.
Question for you. Come on down.
She could postpone it to the
Yeah,
meeting.
I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying. I'm not trying to set precedent here.
Is there a lesser number besides 15 that would work, or is 15
Well,
pretty much?
I would be okay with something like that when it's this is a different scenario. You guys have to take into consideration that every lot is different. If it was like a straight line and I was trying to pass that corner of the house, then it would be different. All I'm trying to do is literally put the fence that touches the house is gonna stay where it's at, and I'm just straightening that little portion. And if you look on the survey, it actually angles out, so it's not like it's going straight, it starts straight and then it starts curving out or back into
Yeah,
the
I see
property.
fence turns a little bit.
I'm not trying to go past that corner, absolutely not. All I'm trying to do is straighten it, and that's it.
My question comes to this. When you were here just a few minutes ago, you said, I just want to put the fence back to its original location. Can you tell me the distance from the original location where the corner is now to that corner property?
Well, it varies because, like I said, every
Not
property.
to the corner, it doesn't.
Well, no, it varies. It varies from the corner of the house that's currently there. I would be within The side, the 25 feet.
The 15, how did you measure the 15 foot? Where did that come
From the farthest, from this point.
That's what I'm asking. What's
Yeah.
the distance from the existing fence to that corner?
17 feet.
So there's the number I was looking for.
Right, so it's 17 feet. If I put it in just a little bit, it would be about 16 or so, which is why I initially put it 15. I'm not pushing the fence forward. I just want to straighten it a little bit. But these lots are actually a little weird because they're not the same measurement back here like they are.
No,
back here.
I understand that. Again, it goes back to, you said you want to put the fence back in the original location. You just want to replace it. To me, what we just discussed, that's 17 feet, not 15 feet. That's the number I was looking for personally, so.
Yeah. And, you know, if you want to not grant the 1 foot, that's fine. Because here's the thing, you have to also understand that in addition to these variances that we actually pay for, because it is not free, we actually are also pulling a permit. So if I don't put the fence exactly where you approved it, guess what? I fail inspection. So I'm always going to do the right thing and put that fence where you guys approved it for. So.
Any other
Well, I
questions?
don't think we were in any way suggesting that you wouldn't.
Oh, no, I'm just saying in general, like, this is just one part of the process. There's whole nother part. And the county, the zoning people, they want to see that approval, and they'll go out and measure. And I will tell you, Seminole County is very strict. If you're even a few inches off, they're failing you. So everybody, you know, that does these variances, for the most part, I would say, that is doing the right thing, because you're going through this whole process, you know?
Well, it's like I put a shed in, and I was allowed to put it 10 feet off the property line, but I put it at 11. Why? I didn't want issues when they measured it. I get it.
Yeah.
You ask for a little bit more, so if you're off an inch or two.
There's a
no
little
issue.
buffer there, exactly. But it's never going to go against what you guys are saying, so that we have issues, you know, when we do the final inspection of the fence.
Any other questions for the applicant while she's up? Any other questions for staff? Okay, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion to approve amending the 15-foot dimension to 17-foot based on applicant's representative's identification of where the existing corner is and a statement that we replace the existing fence in its existing location. That
We have a
hopefully clear enough.
Second to the motion.
Second that.
All right, any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries, it's approved at 17 feet. All right, good luck to you. If you can make it in January, please do. I'm interested in hearing your ideas. I'm sure. You're here every month. All right. All right, next item.
Item number 9 is a variance request for 1054 Chesterfield Circle, located in the Amherst subdivision. The request is for an east side street setback reduction from 25 feet to 10 feet for a privacy fence in the R1AA zoning district. Subject property is a corner lot and has 2 front yards for setback purposes. The front of the house faces Chesterfield Circle. The Brookline Court side is where the variance is being sought. The request is to construct a 6-foot vinyl privacy fence, 15 feet into the required 25-foot side street setback. The privacy fence is approximately 10 feet from the sidewalk and 21 feet from the edge of pavement. The proposed privacy fence encroaches into a utility easement and will be required to meet the criteria for placement with an estoppel letter at building permitting. Traffic engineering has no objection to the placement of the fence as it relates to site visibility. The Amherst Homeowners Association has approved the fence. A letter of support has been received from the affected adjacent property owner. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, any questions for staff? Did you breathe during that?
Mr. Chair?
I don't think so.
They just get faster.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just real quick, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I didn't mishear.
That's okay.
The sidewalk, the proposed fence is 10 feet from the sidewalk and 21 feet from the edge of pavement, not 10 feet from the edge of pavement. I thought I heard that, but I just want to make sure.
10 feet from the sidewalk and 21 feet from edge of pavement.
Okay, I just misheard what you said.
Yep.
Thank you.
The sidewalk is right there on the property line, so.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant present? Good evening, sir. We finally got there. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Terrence Miller. I go by Terry. 1054 Chesterfield Circle. So this whole thing started as our neighbor, adjacent neighbor behind us, they had set up yeah, that's how it started. They had set up a vinyl fence behind us, and I drove back to see it. And previously, we'd had a window that, similar to that, so the little section you see in the center is actually, it pulls out, and it's frosted glass. And we put in a new window so that you couldn't see through the frosted glass window that was in there initially when the house was built in '84. So we put in this new window thinking that it would help keep people from being able to see while we were in the shower, if we happen to have the light on. If you don't have the light on, you can't see anything through there. So when my neighbor did this, I drove back to check out the new fence, just went down into the cul-de-sac, turned back around. My wife happened to be in the bathroom, and I looked in and I saw her, and I thought, oh my gosh, everybody can see if she's in the shower in the morning at 5 o'clock, when she gets ready for work. I was like, this is what they get to see. And so that's, again, where we kind of started this whole process, is we were looking at putting a new vinyl fence in, just like they had put in to kind of match what they had done. They had removed some bushes that were back there, splitting the two houses up so you could see into the pool room or the screen room. And so we thought, we'd like to put a fence back there to block the view of the pool. And then, again, I saw this and thought, I can't have my wife standing in the shower in the mornings and people be able to see her silhouette.
So that's the side of the house?
Yes, that's our master bedroom side of the house.
And how far from the back corner of the house is that window?
From back corner of the house?
Sure. By the pool side.
25 feet, maybe, 30, 25
So how far
feet.
is that from the front of the house then?
About 20 feet as well. It's
All right.
right, kind of towards the middle.
All right.
There's other pictures where you can see, I don't know if I put, they should be in there as well.
Mr. Chair, it's on page 113.
Yeah.
You can see the side.
So it's the
Oh,
glass,
that's not
it's
far
the glass block window, so it sits more towards the front. What's that?
You said it is, the block windows are what you're describing?
Yeah, and it's actually the type that's beveled and it's
There we
supposed to be
go.
opaque. And it's
I see
really
it now. Okay.
Not as opaque as you'd hope it would be.
So I see. So I guess my next question is, why go all the way to the front of the house with the fence if you're just trying to block that window? Why not stop just past
So-
that window?
Just past that, we have an existing little semi-privacy fence, and we have, the county tells you that you have to have the backflow prevention valves, and it sticks up like 4 feet, and we've got a water softener over there, so just kind of to block what's there was,
So you're just trying to hide equipment.
just hide
on
it
the
so
side
it
of the
doesn't
house.
look ugly on the side of the house.
Right.
And it sits right at the front edge of the house.
Some
there.
people would say, I just want it because it's there.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
No,
All the
there's a
time.
real reason to it. And
So-
to answer Mr. Hadaway's question from earlier about why exactly we want this distance in particular is the 5-foot gate, in order to get equipment back there to cut the grass. If you go to open it one direction, you've got the water softener and the backflow prevention valve there. And so if it were to open up too far, it could break off the backflow prevention valve. So you need to be able to open it 5 feet the other direction. So that's where we came up with the 15 feet for this. So I actually did have an answer for that question.
Any questions for the applicant? Yes, sir.
And am I wrong, but I kind of feel like also, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth.
No, no.
When you're talking about your setback from the side there, from the sidewalk in the street, you've got two beautiful trees there. Do they kind of play into your thought process also?
So yeah, the one in the back by the screen room, we had looked at possibly going to the inside of that, but that's when you brought into consideration the backflow prevention valve. So we went to the outside of it, and I actually had a huge limb removed from it so that we could get as close to that tree as possible.
See the cut?
Yeah, it was $250 cut.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you. Is there anyone to speak in support of the request? Is there anyone to speak in opposition to the request? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. It's approved. Good luck to you. Your wife can shower in peace now.
Please don't put that on the record.
Item number 10 is a variance request for 435 Old Geneva Road, located in the Geneva Heights subdivision. The request is for a front yard setback reduction from 100 feet to 50 feet for an accessory structure in the A1 zoning district. The request is to construct a 400-square-foot carport encroaching 50 feet into the required 100-foot front yard setback. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Questions for staff? Is the applicant present? Good evening.
Good evening.
Save the best for last.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for not having a fence. Okay. State your name and address for the record.
Brent Ramsey, 435 Old Geneva Road, Geneva.
Okay. What would you like to tell us, sir?
Just, we're in a nice rural area, got beautiful trees on the property. That's one of the reasons why I bought it. And where we park, you know, it looks like, I mean, I would have to remove trees to meet the variance. I hate to remove any of the trees. We're 50 foot, there's a sidewalk, you know, so there's no future sidewalk that, you know, we would be hindering. And we're 50 foot from the road. I just can't imagine Old Geneva ever going 4-lane, but, and if you'll notice the aerial there, my neighbor's garage is about where I'm, you know, proposing to put the carport. It's a open frame, metal roof, very nice 20 by 20 carport, just to protect the vehicles basically from the trees.
Kind of a pole barn type thing?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Yep. You know, I wanted to do it right. A lot of the guys out there in Geneva, they don't pull permits, they don't do anything, they just put it up and ask for forgiveness later.
Say it ain't so.
What?
Don't throw that.
All right. Any
Shocked.
questions for the applicant?
I have one, sir.
Yes, sir.
There's a, you know, you have 30 foot from the carport that you're asking for from the existing house, or any reason, magic number for that?
Trees, and then the driveway goes through there, so, yeah.
I can't see that from here, so I just asked him. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
And sir, it looks like your house is located 100 feet from the property line itself, so
Yeah, that's
anywhere you put that carport in your front yard, you're going to need a variance for it.
right.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Is there anyone to speak in support of the request? Is there anyone to speak in opposition to the request? We have a motion.
Motion to approve. Sorry.
Motion to approve, a second. Any discussion?
Step on your motion.
You're gonna roll.
All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. It's approved. Good luck to you. Happy parking. All right.
Someone coming in and saving trees, how nice. 2 people saving trees.
And minutes?
Did we get minutes?
Yes,
No.
you did.
Yes, you did.
You did.
I didn't.
We'll look at them next meeting, because I don't remember seeing them.
I don't remember seeing these.
I know, I mean, I told her my email wasn't working, so I did not receive them. And
They were emailed to you guys
I believe you.
about a week ago.
Can we beg your forgiveness and do this in December?
Sure.
And I'll go back and look for my email.
We'll resend them.
Hillary, did you send them, or did,
Jay did.
that might be the...
Blame the new kid. Yeah.
But we verified it this morning, so.
Right, okay.
my email is.
It's probably me.
Since like September.
I'm not deferring it, it's probably me. I get like 100 emails a day, so I may have missed it. Okay, anything else for the good of the order?
Mr. Chair.
Just briefly, everyone, it doesn't have to be on the record, but I did want to introduce one of our attorneys from our office, Desiree, who will be assisting moving forward. So you'll either see me goofing things up or Desiree getting everything right. So just as an FYI, moving forward, so.
Greetings.
Thank you. Just, you know, we've had a couple topics here where we've talked about having another discussion, a meeting. Would that be part of our normal, one of our normal meetings?
No, I'm asking for a meeting outside of normal meetings where we're not talking about a specific item.
Okay.
We can have a generalized discussion and maybe come to some type of group consensus. There's always going to be differences in facts and opinions, but I would like to have a chance to say whatever we need to say, and at least get it out there.
And still
be
be in
done with
compliance
it.
with sunshine and.
Right.
My
Yes.
question is that a...
And if she has a suggestion that's a solution that we can somehow work, I'm good with it.
Is that a publicly advertised?
It will have to be, yes.
Yes.
Yes, and what I would call it a workshop.
Workshop.
And what can work with the board on the scheduling of it. Typically, what we try to do is, for your convenience, do it right before the hearing date, so you don't have to make a special trip. So instead of being here at 6, maybe we can have a workshop at 6 o'clock prior to the date, or whatever is at your convenience. I'll work it out
I'll
with
make
the
it
board
work.
members.
I'd even be in favor of, I have a feeling this discussion's going to take a while.
Then we may not want to have it before the meeting. I can tell you the January meeting typically, because of the holidays, is a
Right,
very
it's
heavy
even longer.
meeting.
Maybe we could do it on one of the other weeks, and I'll make it work. You tell me.
And I'll
when
work with
we'll do it.
everyone on what the most convenient time.
Any input, do we give you any input into topics, or, I mean, at that point, or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you have any ideas, things we need to discuss at the meeting besides fencing, because that's number one, so
And
let them know.
the reason I say that is, obviously, we've had a discussion with our regular participant, and, she has a magic number. My goal is not to come up with a magic number, based on that. So, to have a discussion that we look at everyone individually.
Also, I ask you'll probably be there anyway, but if somebody from the county attorney could be there in case we have any questions.
Of course.
I also wanted to add into that topic, we do have a 10% rule where they can do an administrative variance.
Right.
Where it doesn't come before the board.
Right. You wouldn't see it unless it exceeded the 10%.
No, I understand. I mean, again.
Unless they denied it,
I don't
and
want to
then-
keep quoting my past life, but, our board always had a variance. If they met a certain percentage, it was administrative. If we had a.
Well, they do. It's 10%.
Right, and we had a guideline, and if it was beyond that guideline, then it went straight to above us, so.
Okay.
As a part of this meeting, perhaps we could also have somebody from land development, county land development, or somebody who's responsible for the county land development code. Is it possible to put together a brief presentation for Land Development Code 101 as it applies to
Fences?
the topics, fences most
Yes.
primarily, that we discuss and decide on here at these meetings?
Our number
Absolutely.
one point of contention is always fences. Because they're right out there where everybody in the world can see them, and they're right on top of the road and the sidewalks, and I've been on this board 11 years now, I'm getting old, and it's been an issue for 11 years.
I would probably recommend that we do limit it, given that the discussion is probably going to be long. And what we can do is that if we want to do additional workshops on additional subjects, we can do that. But maybe for the first one, we can focus on
Fencing.
the fences. And I would also recommend, because we are proposing changes to our fence ordinance, that we have somebody come that goes through how to change our land development code and what their proposed changes are.
When you set the date, well, I'm going to be reaching out to you anyway. I want to get the contact information for our board members, and I want to talk to some of them about attendance anyway.
Yes.
Stress to them to please come to the workshop as well. So because my next step is, if folks don't show, is to talk to the commissioners that appointed them.
Appointed them.
Because I talked to one once before, and he thought his person was showing up, so.
Right.
Okay. Anything else?
Yes, sir.
Just for the record, I've been attending all the ones I've been asked to attend, so.
You're a good man.
Okay.
Good night, everybody. See you next month. The 2nd of December is the next one. It's like right around the corner.
It's the 5th.
Larry, you're an engineer?